what are the benefits of working in a national park? So I have worked in Yellowstone National Park for 2 summer seasons now. I loved every second of it. I just, in general, it's the only national park that I've worked in so far, but just from my experience there, I am continuously pursuing new opportunities to work in national parks because it's such a unique experience, I would say, and yeah, I just love it. But so one of the first, and I guess maybe the more obvious benefits of working in a national park is that you get a kind of free unlimited pass into the park and sometimes even surrounding parks. So when I worked at Yellowstone, it was free to enter Yellowstone itself, but it was also free to enter Grand Teton National Park, which visually, the Grand Tetons are just my favorite, just natural view in general that I have seen so far in my life. And so that was just great to be able to explore both of those parks freely, because I believe these days it is either $25 or $30 to get into either of those parks. And because I remember as a teenager we did a road trip through both Yellowstone and went down into the Tetons, and it was about $25 back then. So I don't know if it's gone up since then. I want to say it's $30 now, but so yeah, having free access to the parks is definitely a bonus, especially since you have long-term access to the parks. But my length of my job there was about 5 months. It was from the beginning of May to the beginning of October. So that was just, I would say that's the best way to experience a national park, is to work there in some capacity, and have housing and meals there. But yeah, so that free pass really is a nice benefit there. And then the next benefit, which especially for me is important, is how you're constantly surrounded by wildlife and nature and just unbelievable vistas of one kind or another. And, I want to say there's 68 national parks throughout the country, and they're also different from each other. You can have the boiling hot desert of Death Valley, the mountains of Glacier National Park or Alaska, or like Acadia on the East Coast in Maine. There's just endless possibilities. And then also just in the National Park Service in general, they have kind of smaller areas like national monuments and things like that you might be able to work at. But yeah, so for me, I love being in nature and kind of away from civilization to a certain extent. And that is definitely what Yellowstone provides. I worked in the Lake Village, which is almost 8,000 feet up in elevation, very remote. You're up in the mountains, you're up by this beautiful, lake. The nearest Walmart is an hour and 45 minutes away, So you do have challenges like that can be remote depending on where you are. But yeah, for me that was just, I love being away from everything. It was quiet, tons of hiking, whitewater rafting you could do in certain areas outside of the park, at least in Yellowstone. But yeah, I have nothing bad to say about the remoteness of it. I just really liked the ability to be so easily out in nature. Just like leaving the dorms, you're just in the forest already. Like there's no real town, you just are in the forest. And I really enjoyed that. And if nature and kind of quiet and being away from civilization in a way is a high priority for you as well, then I would definitely recommend working in a national park for that reason. Just because most of them are, kind of built like that to preserve the land and keep civilization on the outside of it. So I really enjoyed that personally. But the next benefit, which kind of ties into that one, is the unique lifestyle. that you get with working in a national park. Besides just the wildlife, the views, the hiking, you do also have, at least in my experience, a more unique way of living. Usually it's dorm style. Usually you have a employee dining room, which is like communal, so everyone like comes together there. And I really enjoyed that. And it kind of feels like a very tight-knit little community that you have there. Now, you know, each park could be different in terms of its housing and how it's set up and everything like that. I've heard, for example, in like Yosemite National Park, the employees live in tents, which is interesting. I have not tried that, but some people like it, some people don't like it. And then some areas you need to buy your own groceries, you know, maybe there's no employee dining room, things like that. I personally enjoy having a employee dining room. It just kind of makes things easier, especially if you don't really have like a car or reliable transportation to get groceries. So that's definitely important. But other than that, yeah, just living in a national park is so definitely different from a typical 9-to-5 job. You know, it's not your typical commute to work. Sometimes there is no commute to work. Sometimes you just walk across the street and you're at work. But yeah, and again, it's not for everybody. Sometimes, like, that level of remoteness that a lot of national parks have would drive some people crazy. You know, especially if you're very reliant on luxuries, like certain, like, you know, if you need your Starbucks, you know, you need to, or your drive-through, whatever, like, you're not going to get that in a national park typically. Or even Wi-Fi, for example, like our village did not have Wi-Fi for the guests there. And even the employee Wi-Fi would usually not work or be very, very spotty. So kind of the luxuries and just kind of things you have to live without when living in a national park. Yeah, and then the other kind of benefit that I think is arguably the most important for me, at least, is that usually you get some sort of seasonal time off when you are working, you know, like national park jobs. They're very rarely full-time. I do know that Grand Canyon and Death Valley have full-time positions, but in terms of other parks, I'm not sure. I know Yellowstone, you know, they have their summer season, then they have about a 2-month break, and then they go back for like a winter season, which you could, you know, apply for if you wanted to work the winter there. But it's not continuous. So for me and one of my friends that worked with me there in Yellowstone, that 2-month gap is very important for us, because that kind of gives us more time to explore and like kind of do things that we wanted to do. For example, this past year, when my friend and I finished our season at Yellowstone, we pretty much went directly to Spain to hike the Camino de Santiago, which is this huge, like 400-mile something hike across Spain. And we had the freedom to do that because we were not in a full-time position. You know, because of that, that was like a hike that a lot of people can't do until they're fully retired, you know, and have the time and the money to do it. But yeah, just having the freedom, like, you know, you save up all your money for the season and then you go do something that you know, were planning to do. And I think that's a really great thing to be able to go off to, you know, Europe or something, or South America, or do some big road trip, or go somewhere that you always wanted to go, you know. So, or even if you want to, like, you know, get better at certain skills, or in the meantime, or really anything. You could do anything in 2 months, pretty much. So yeah, I really enjoy that freedom. Or even you could just use it to spend time with your family. You don't go back home in between, you know, seasons. And then, yeah, whenever it's done, just go back to wherever you want. Either, some people go to the same place season after season. I usually like to go somewhere new. Yellowstone is the only place that I have gone back to more than once. So, but yeah, so I think that is the main thing that I really like about working in national parks and just seasonal work in general, is that you get a high amount of freedom that most jobs do not give you. You have to work so much just to get a few vacation days or paid sick days or paid time off, whatever. Now the benefit of those jobs is that you do get like health insurance and things like that, and you usually make more money. But for me, and I think for some, certain people, like I value more the experience of working in these beautiful places and being out in nature and being able to explore in that way, and not really being tied down. So those are my priorities, at least for the moment. And I think people who have a similar outlook would really enjoy working in national parks or just seasonal work in general, at ranches or resorts and things like that, because there are definitely a lot of options out there for that sort of lifestyle. But yeah, so that is kind of the main benefits that I wanted to talk about for working in a national park, wherever that national park may be. But yeah, so hopefully you found this video helpful. And I usually make videos about once a week, so stick around for those.